guys all hear me okay? Thumbs up if you can hear me okay. Good? Awesome. All right. Well, I am so excited to be able to talk to you guys today. This is so cool to have you guys all here joining me at the South Carolina Aquarium. So, like Miss Jenna said, my name is Beth, and I am an educator here at the aquarium. Now, raise your hand if you have ever come to the aquarium before. How many people have actually come down here to visit us at the aquarium? Awesome. Okay, good. I see a really good amount of hands that are going up. Very cool. So a lot of you guys know kind of what we have here at the aquarium, but one of the things that I love about working here is that we like to show off all of the really cool habitats and the plants and animals that go in those habitats that we have right here in our state in South Carolina. So those of you guys that have come to the aquarium, or for those of you that haven't, what we like to do is we like to take you guys on a journey, basically from the mountains of South Carolina all the way down to the coast, into the ocean, and show you all of the amazing plants and animals that we have here in our state. So the one region that we're going to be focusing on today is the one that I'm actually standing in right now. And I'm going to try to do a little screen share with you guys real quick. We'll see if we can get this to work. All right. Okay, are you guys seeing that? The map? Okay, good. I'm seeing some thumbs up. Awesome. All right. So if you guys look at that map, and we'll see if we can blow it up here, get it a little bit bigger. I don't know if we'll be able to make it do that. But if you guys look at that map, that is a map of our regions that we have here, right, in the state of South Carolina. Now, if you guys take a look around, I'll stop our screen sharing here. And we'll go back to looking at the exhibit that I'm standing in. Does anybody want to guess what region that I might be in? And teachers, sorry, you might have to unmute for a second if you want the kids to kind of yell out what I might be in.
Blue region.
Yeah, you guys are so smart. You got it. Yeah, so I'm actually standing in our mountain exhibit right now, or what is represented as the Blue Ridge Mountain region here in South Carolina. So in this region, there's lots of thick forest in here. You can also kind of see behind me the mountains of South Carolina. They have a lot of really cool waterfalls, and it's because of all of the higher elevation and all of the mountains that we have. So there's really cool waterfalls. There's very fast-moving rivers and streams too. And then, of course, all of the water that we have in this region is fresh water. And the fresh water that's in this region, it's chilly, it's cold. So the water that we actually have here in this exhibit, we have to keep it cold for the animals that live here because that's what they're used to out in the wild. Now, one animal that we are going to talk about today is one that you can really find a lot in this region. And you can see them kind of all over in the mountains of South Carolina. And that animal, what you guys know, are river otters. So we're going to be talking about river otters today. Now, our river otters here at the aquarium, they live in our mountain exhibit. And the mountains is a great place to find river otters too. Now, we're really lucky here in South Carolina. And I'm going to try to do a screen share here again with you guys. And let's see if I can get it back up here. Oh. There we go. All right. And so let's take a look at another map that I have here. So we'll see if we can pop that up. Oh, shoot, it's not working for some reason. It won't let me click on the next slide. All right, well, we'll try to figure that one out for next time. But what I wanted to show you guys with that map is we have a lot of river systems here in South Carolina. So we have a lot of really good habitat for river otters. So we're very, very lucky that river otter populations here in South Carolina, they're actually doing great. They're doing really well, and we have a lot of river otters here. Now, that wasn't always the case. A long time ago, river otters, they were actually in trouble. So we're talking a really long time ago, like in the late 1800s to early 1900s, river otter populations, they were really, really low. So we just didn't have a lot of river otters out there. Historically, river otters used to be all over the United States and even into Canada. And so what happened was, back in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, that's when a lot of people started started coming in and trying to settle the land and make homes for themselves. And it was also a time when people had to survive, and it was very cold in the winter too. And river otters, they have an incredibly thick fur coat to them. And unfortunately, river otters were hunted quite a bit for that coat and for that fur, because people wanted to actually use that fur to make coats for themselves and blankets and things like that so that they could stay warm in the winter. So that was one reason that once people started coming in and settling the land where river otters were, that's one reason that we saw their population start to go down, is because people wanted them for that fur to be able to use it to make stuff for themselves. And then another reason that river otters started to their numbers started to go down was just with people coming in and the land being developed and houses, then we started to see a lot of their habitat get taken away. And especially when we start thinking of like big companies coming in and industries like oil and coal industries and things like that, that actually started affecting the water and making the water get polluted. And that was really harming river otters as well. So there was the big influx of people that were coming in, or a lot of people moving into the area where river otters were, it actually really hurt them, and it really had a big impact on their populations. And the river otter numbers went down. Now, luckily, people started to take notice, and people realized that we were losing our river otters. And so they actually stepped in and they started to do things to help out the river otter population and to hopefully get more river otters back out into the wild. And so what they did was they actually would take river otters and they would try to put them back out into the wild in some of the states that had lost river otter populations, or in some of the areas where river otters had disappeared. And so now we are doing better. So in the United States, river otter populations, for the most part, are pretty healthy and they're doing well, but there are still some states that used to have river otters that still don't have them, or they just have very, very kind of small numbers of river otters. So there are some areas where the population is still low, and it's never really come back from when the first settlers really started to come here to the United States. But for the most part, river otter populations, they're doing pretty good now, and they're healthy. But what's important is we need to keep it that way. We don't ever want to see the river otter population or the river otter numbers start to go back down again. So there's some really good things that we can do to try to protect river otters. The one biggest thing is that we need to keep their waterways clean. They love to be in those rivers and ponds and lakes and those freshwater habitats like that. So we need to make sure we're keeping those habitats and those areas really clean. We don't want pollution getting in there. We also don't want any kind of trash or anything like that to get there. So one of the easiest things that you guys can do is, if you ever do see trash on the ground, pick it up and put it in a trash can or put it in a recycling bin, because that will keep that trash from eventually making its way to the rivers or to ponds into the river otter's habitat. And river otters are very curious animals. So if trash and things like that do get in their environment, a lot of times they'll try to eat it. So that's an easy thing to do that you guys can do to help river otters, is just pick up trash and recycle it. And of course, then obviously don't put trash out there in the first place. Make sure that your trash ends up where it should. And another thing we can do is just we can be mindful of where their habitats are, and we don't want to take away a lot of their wetland areas and the things that are a really good habitat for river otters. So when we do build houses and things like that, we just kind of keep that in mind to make sure that we're not taking away all of that habitat that they need to survive too. So they have a really cool kind of history to them of how we were almost lost them, but then with the help of scientists and the people that really cared about river otters, we were able to bring them back and to get their populations healthy again. And we want to make sure we keep it that way. Now let's talk a little bit more about river otters, all right? Because some of you guys are actually going to get to meet. You're going to get to meet our two river otters here in just a few minutes. But first, I just want to tell you guys some information about river otters, which is pretty cool. So the first thing that we always like to talk about at the aquarium is kind of why river otters are different than sea otters. Because sometimes people think that they're the same thing, and they're actually two different animals. So river otters, like we were talking about, like fresh water, they need to be in freshwater habitats, like rivers and streams and ponds and things like that. Sea otters, they actually need to be in salt water. So they live in the ocean. We would never see a sea otter in a river or a pond or anything like that. They have to be out there in the ocean habitat. Now, another area or big difference between the two is actually where we can kind of find them. So sea otters are actually only going to be on the west coast. So out where California is and Oregon and places like that. That's where we would find sea otters. We actually do not have sea otters here where we are in South Carolina or anywhere along the East Coast. So we'd have to go way out west to be able to go see a sea otter in its natural habitat. Now, the other big difference between the two is that sea otters, they pretty much spend their whole time in the water. They never come out of the ocean. And you probably have seen pictures of them kind of floating on their backs and eating urchins and things like that. And that's pretty much how they spend their time. It's all in the water. But a river otter is actually really cool because it can spend most of its time on the land and in the water too. So they can go either or. If they want to go swim, they can go swim. And if they want to hop out and run around on the land, they can do that too. So they're really good at being on the land and being out actually in the water. Where a sea otter pretty much has to stay in the water its whole life. So that's a little bit of a difference. So we always like to kind of point that out so that people understand that there is actually a difference between the two types of otters that are out there. Now, river otters themselves are really cool. We'll talk a little bit about some of their adaptations, and then I'll walk you guys over, and so you get to actually meet our river otters. So the first one, as we've already talked about, is that fur, right? And that's what, unfortunately, that's what caused their populations to go down, was that nice thick coat that they have. And I want to show you guys here. So this right here is actually river otter fur. So this is fur. And believe it or not, in just this patch that I have right here that I'm holding up to you guys, there is about 400,000 hairs just in this patch right here. 400,000 hairs just in this patch. I have a lot of hair, but that's more hair than I have on my entire head just in this little patch right here. So they have incredibly thick fur to them. Now that fur is going to be important because like we talked about earlier, a lot of times they'll live in habitats where it's cold or it gets cold in the winter. And so that fur is going to help keep them warm. It's also going to help when they go in the water. What's really cool is river otter, their fur is kind of special. And when they go in the water, it can kind of trap a layer of air in between their fur and in between their skin. So this kind of almost air bubble, if you think of it like that, gets kind of trapped in between their fur and their skin. And that can actually keep them warm and keep kind of their skin dry when they're actually swimming around in the water. So when they are in the water, they don't get cold like we would. They actually can stay pretty warm when they're in there swimming around in the water. So that's a really cool adaptation that river otters have, that fur that they have. So you'll get to see that, and you'll get to see them in just a second and see that fur. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But another really cool adaptation that river otters have is we talked about how they're good swimmers, right? And one thing that helps them be a really good swimmer are their webbed feet. So river otters, if we were to actually look at their feet, they actually have webbing in between all of their toes. And so that gives them a lot of ability to swim and move around in the water, is having that nice webbing. Now, if we wanted to be able to swim like that, we'd have to wear something crazy like this glove right here to be able to kind of swim around and move like a river otter does. But they just have that natural webbing in between their toes. So a really good thing that helps them to be able to swim. Now, another thing you'll see is they've got very, very long tails, too. And those tails are really going to help them to kind of steer in the water. And it's what helps kind of give them their power. So you'll see their big, long tails. You'll see that fur. And you probably won't be able to get to see their web feet up close. So you'll get to see them swim and see just how great they are in the water and on the land. So they can actually swim about 12 miles an hour underwater, and when they're on the land, they can run 18 miles an hour. So they're pretty quick when they get in that water. Now, the last thing that I want to show you guys here about river otters is their teeth. So take a look at this. This is a river otter skull right here. So this is what the head of a river otter would look like, and their teeth. So these guys are what we would call carnivores. They're very good good predators, and they really like to go after anything that they can catch. The first things that they'll go after are things like fish and crayfish, but if they can catch frogs and toads and animals like that, they'll eat them. Sometimes, believe it or not, they'll even eat turtles and snakes and other reptiles like lizards and things like that too. So really, with the river otter, they're going to try to eat. Here at the aquarium, we feed them all kinds of different stuff, a different diet, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we actually go see the river otters in the exhibit. But they're very good predators, and they have those very, very sharp teeth to them, so they are very good at being able to catch their prey in their mouth and hold it there too. All right, so that's just a little bit about river otters. We'll talk a little bit more about them. But are you guys ready to go meet our otters? Would you like to see them? Yeah. Okay, so we actually have a special treat planned for you guys. We are going to do an enrichment with our otters, and basically what that means is we're going to give them something special in their exhibit that is something outside of their food. So we still feed them. We feed them 3 times a day here at the aquarium, but this is going to be a special treat for them, and it's going to help them to be able to kind of use all of their senses that they have to be able to hunt. And it's just something that gives them something to kind of play with in their environment, and it keeps them happy and it keeps them healthy. So that's what you guys are actually going to get to see is our river otters get an enrichment today. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start moving the camera here. I'm going to take my tablet that I have, and I'm going to move the camera so that we can actually go start to see the river otter exhibit. So we're going to do a little bit of movement for you guys. So it'll be a little bit bouncy here just for a second, and I apologize for that. But we're going to walk over to where our river otters actually are in this exhibit so that you can see them. All right. Here we go. We're going to take you guys on a tour. Okay, so let me make sure I got you guys. All right, so now you guys are looking into our river otter exhibit right now. Woo! We'll show you guys the enrichment that they're going to get here. You guys can wave, say hello. All right, so this is, we actually have food that's been hidden in those pipes right there, and it kind of makes them look like a log, right? And so the river otters are going to have to kind of work to get that food out of the pipes, okay? So here we go. We're going to actually show you guys. I'll get down into the exhibit here. So you guys will actually get to see the, oh, okay. All right. So there they go. You know, instantly they were on it. They were trying to get to it. So if you can see them, they're kind of rolling around, trying to get that fish out of there. And this is great exercise for them, and it really makes them use a lot of their senses to be able to try to figure out how they're going to get that food out of the tube that they have. So I'm going to try to walk over here a little bit. So they kind of went out of view here for a second. All right, there they are. All right, so if you guys are watching, you're noticing that they're really good in the water, right? They can move really well. You can see those really long tails that they have. And our 2 guys here, their names are Ace and Stono. And those names might sound familiar to you guys because Stono is a river here in South Carolina, right? And then Ace was named after the Ace Basin, which is an area where 3 rivers kind of drain here, kind of a river basin of 3 big rivers that we have here in South Carolina. So that's how they got their names, Ace and Stono. Pretty cool story as to how we actually got Ace because he was abandoned as a pup out in the wild. And he was found in Pawleys Island. And so somebody rescued him, and they brought him to us, and we've had him here with us ever since. And then Stono, he was actually born at another zoo. And then we got him here so that he could have, we could keep Ace company in the exhibit. So now we have our 2 guys here, and they've been with us for a while. Stono is 12 years old, and Ace is 13. And in captivity or in human care like this, they could live to be about 20, 25 years old. So they still have some good years left in them for sure. So they're both going after their own individual logs right now. They're trying to get, I think I saw one of them get a little bit out of it, but they are going to town. That's pretty cool. So another thing that river otters can do, which is kind of cool, is when they do go underwater, they can shut their ears. Oh, there's one that's eating a fish. They can shut their ears, and they can actually close their nostrils or their nose too when they go underwater. And that helps them from getting water in their ears and their nose, of course. So a little different than us. We have to shut our nose and plug our ears ourselves if we wanted to do that. And then one other really cool thing that river otters have on them is they actually have river otter whiskers. And so this would kind of be like if we were to put our fingers up to our face and kind of stick our fingers out. So if you guys want to try that, kind of take your hand, put it up to your face. Yeah, stick your fingers out like that. So their whiskers are a really good sense of feeling, especially when they're underwater. So maybe the water might be murky or they might not be able to see too well underwater. They can actually use those whiskers to kind of feel around and hunt for their food as well. So that's another really cool adaptation that they have, are those nice whiskers. So what you guys are seeing right now is a really good example of what they would do out in the wild. They like to, like we said, they spend a lot of time hunting for food, but they're also pretty playful. Sometimes you can see them like sliding down the banks of rivers, especially in the snow. They'll slide down the snow and things like that too. So they are pretty playful animals for sure. And we like to make sure that our guys stay active here. And that's why we do things like this with them. But they do sleep a lot too. So if you've ever come to the aquarium and you haven't seen them in the exhibit, chances are they've probably been sleeping. And I'll show you that big log right there. That's one of their favorite sleep spots. They're together and sleep, that big log. So next time you're at the aquarium, if you don't see the river otters, check the log because I bet they'll be sleeping in there. Pretty cool. All right. If you guys would like, I can start answering some questions that some of the students might have, or we can talk about anything that you guys are curious about with river otters.
Jackson. We have a student at Daniel Island School who has a question, if that's all right.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
All right, he's coming up to the video now.
Okay.
Make sure you speak loudly, okay? Go ahead. You got your question? It's okay. Someone got a question? Our first one forgot, so our second one's coming.
Oh, that's okay.
How many river otters are there throughout the USA?
Oh, you know, as far as like a number goes?
Yeah.
I am an exact number as far as like how many river otters we actually have here in the United States. All I know is that they're healthy, and so we have a good number of them. So we're not worried about them becoming threatened or endangered right now. But I don't actually know exactly if anybody knows exactly how many river otters we have. But that's a good question.
A question here at How Hall Ames.
Okay.
All right, Kenzie.
What are river otters predators?
Oh, that's a great question. So river otters, their biggest predators are actually alligators. So alligators and in some places crocodiles, where we have crocodiles in the United States. But that's really their top predator, is an alligator. And they, when they're younger, they can be preyed on by some bigger animals. But it's mostly alligators that are really their top predator. So yeah, great question.
We have a question from St. Stephen.
Okay.
Do otters have to eat Pacific fish?
Oh, that's a good question too. Not necessarily, no. They don't need to really eat a specific type of fish or a certain type of fish. They really will try to go after any if they can catch. So a lot of times it's more slow-moving fish. If you think of fish like trying to think like a catfish or kind of a slower-moving fish like that, that's going to be a lot easier for them to catch than some of our faster-moving fish. But really, they will go after anything that they can get. So really not picky. The biggest thing is they just have to eat a lot. Since they're mammals, these guys are mammals. They're like us. A lot of food to get enough energy and to be able to survive. So that's why we feed them 3 times a day here at the aquarium. Is we want to make sure that they're getting enough to eat to be able to be healthy. So for the river otters, it's not necessarily what kind of fish. It's more just making sure that they can catch enough fish to be able to survive.
Oh, we have another question from Daniel Island School.
Yeah.
How many kinds of river otters are there?
Oh, that's a great question. There's not a ton. So they are kind of in the weasel family. They're kind of related to weasels and animals like that. But here in the United States, we have the river otters, and then there are some other type of species. Like I know there's the Asian small-clawed otter, and there are a few other species out there. So there's not a ton of different types of river otters, but there are a few different species that we have.
We have another question at How Hall Ames.
Yeah.
Do they migrate when it gets cold?
They won't necessarily migrate. Since they have that thick fur, they can stay in the colder water, in the colder temperatures. So they're very adapted to being able to live in a cold environment. But sometimes they will move locations. So a river otter might not stay in the same spot necessarily, but they'll kind of roam around and swim through the rivers and kind of find different places to make a home. And what they do a lot of times is they like to find dams that have been abandoned by beavers. So if a beaver has lost the dam that it created, a lot of times river otters will go and they'll move in there and they'll make that their home.
Okay, we have another question from St. Stephen.
Yeah.
How do the river otters protect themselves from their predators?
Oh, that's a great question. They actually they don't have a really great way to protect themselves. So being a fast swimmer definitely helps. Sometimes they can outswim an alligator. But really, and their camouflage too can help them. So that kind of, and sometimes if you guys notice when they go underwater, having that dark fur to them, it's kind of hard to see them when they go underwater like that. So they do have some camouflage that can help them out too. Being able to swim fast and hopefully swim away from their predator, or to kind of hide from their predators. But they can, if they do feel threatened, especially like by another river otter, if another river otter was maybe trying to move in on its territory or something like that, they will make kind of like barking and grunting sounds at one another too. So they will communicate with each other and kind of talk to each other. If it did feel threatened, it would probably try to kind of bark and growl at that animal, but unfortunately that's probably not going to do much for an alligator. So their best chance would be to swim away.
One more question from Daniel Island School.
Okay.
How long can a river otter hold its breath underwater?
Oh, that's a great question.
Oh.
So they can, when they're underwater, they can go for about 30 minutes if they need to. They don't always do that just because it can be kind of stressful on them to hold their breath for that long. But if they needed to, they could go underwater for a lot longer than we could.
We have a question from How Hall Ames.
Okay.
Oh, she's coming up. Ashlyn, go ahead and ask it.
How much do river otters weigh?
Oh, that's a good question too. Let's see. I think the last time that we weighed our guys. I think they were like right around about 20 pounds, I want to say. So right around 20 pounds.
All right, we have another question from St. Stephen.
Okay.
Can any otter do any tricks?
So that's a good question. What we do with our guys, so an otter out in the wild, they might not necessarily be able to kind of do what we would call tricks. But our guys here at the aquarium train them. We train them to do certain behaviors, and it's actually because we want to make sure that they're staying healthy. So what we'll do is we will actually train them target. And so we have the person that takes care of our otters here at the aquarium. Her name is Kendall. And Kendall has trained our otters to be able to target in certain spots in the exhibit. And so if she blows a whistle, she has a special whistle. It's actually the same whistle that you use if you're training dogs and things like that. She'll blow that special whistle, and she'll point, and the otters will go to where she has told them to go. And the reason that we do that is because we want to be able to get a good look at the river otters every day. We want to make sure that they look okay. They don't have any, wounds or anything that has happened to them in the exhibit. And we want to make sure that they're staying healthy in here. So we want to be able to have them kind of stay in a certain spot for a little bit of time so that we can give them a good look over and make sure that they're healthy and they're happy in here. And so we have them target to certain spots. We also do that when we're going to feed them. So we actually will feed the river otters in different spots of the exhibit too. And that's because we want to make sure that each river otter is getting the amount of food that he needs to get. Because we don't want one river otter coming over and stealing all the food we don't want A stealing all the food from Stono or, vice versa. So we make sure that they kind of eat in separate spots of the exhibit too. And so they're kind of trained to go to those spots to eat as well. And then the other thing that we train them for is we train them for when our veterinarian needs to do exams on the river otters. And so they actually know they will stand up on their back legs and let us look at their bellies. They can actually open their mouth a little bit so that we can look at their mouth. They'll show us their paws so that we can look at their paws and make sure that everything looks good there too. So all the things that we have kind of trained them for, it's all to make sure that they're staying healthy in the exhibit. But it's really neat to be able to watch Kendall work with them and train with them.
And we had another question from Daniel Island School.
Okay.
How deep can a river otter go?
Oh, that's a great question. They can dive pretty deep. The average, I don't know if there's really an average out there, but they can go down at least, 10, 15 feet if they needed to. But if you think about kind of where they live, most rivers and ponds and things like that, it's not going to be as deep as you would say like out in the ocean. But they could definitely dive down to the bottom of a river or a stream or a pond or any kind of habitat that they're living in like that. They could get down to the bottom, and then of course they'd have to come back up and get a breath since they have lungs. But they can dive pretty deep if they needed to.
We have another question from St. Stephen.
All
right.
Why do otters sleep on their back?
Oh, yeah. So you're probably thinking of river otters. Sea otters, sorry. Sea otters will spend a lot of time on their back. They actually will be on their back in the water. They sleep like that. They eat like that. And that's just the way that they kind of float there, and it helps them to rest. So they're not using a lot of their energy. And like we talked about with sea otters, they don't get out of the water. So they have to kind of rest like that and kind of lay on their backs and float to rest. So that's one way that sea otters like to sleep. Sometimes if you come in here and you see our guys, they're going to sleep on land. They would never sleep in the water like a sea otter. Sometimes we'll just kind of curl up and sleep. Every now and then you might see one kind of roll over on its back and sleep kind of like a dog. But normally they're kind of curled up and sleeping kind of like either on their side or kind of on their stomachs. But every now and then they might roll over on their back and kind of sleep like that too.
We have another question from Hal Hall.
Yeah,
Are river otters nocturnal?
they are. That's a great question. They are nocturnal. So a lot of times, especially out in the wild, they will be more active at night. So they come out at night to hunt. Our guys here, they're a little bit different since they have a kind of a different schedule. Being up during the day and being fed during the day, they're a little more active during the day than they are at nighttime. And so they're a little bit different, the ones that you see here. But out in the wild, a lot of times river otters will come out at night and hunt at night.
And another question from Daniel Island School.
Yeah.
You can ask. Go ahead. Go ahead.
How wide the fish?
It's okay. Keep going. It's okay. You can do it.
They eat?
How many fish will they eat?
Oh, that's a great question. So here at the aquarium, we feed them about one to two big fish every time that they get a meal. So that would be about 6 fish every day here at the aquarium, plus other things too. So we would feed them other stuff. Sometimes we actually feed them raw meatballs. I know, it's funny. Yeah. So they get fish, and a lot of times they'll get raw meatballs. And they'll so really it's kind of depends. But here at the aquarium, they get about 6 fish a day. Out in the wild, it would be different because out in the wild, it would just be them eating and hunting on their own and trying to get as much food as they can eat. So sometimes they might eat more fish in a day, sometimes they might eat less. But here at the aquarium, it's about 6.
All right, Beth, we have another one from St. Stephen Elementary.
How do river otters communicate with each other?
Oh, so they will. So they'll make different noises. It's kind of what we were talking about with their predators. If they came across a predator, they will make different noises to each other. Sometimes they'll growl at each other or kind of make kind of a barking sound at each other too. Playing, they will make kind of grunts to each other as well. So they do have kind of different sounds that they'll make depending on if they feel like they're threatened or if they're kind of feeling playful or things like that. So they'll make a couple of different noises to each other.
We have a question at Hal Hall Ames.
Okay.
Do river otters get territorial?
They will, yeah, they can. And so sometimes that's why 2 male otters might fight to each other, is because they're kind of in their territory. So that can happen for sure. A lot of times river otters like to be by themselves. A group of otters together, it might be a mom, or sometimes they will kind of play and hunt together, but then they'll go on and kind of go to their own separate homes or their own separate habitats. So the river otters don't live in big groups together. A lot of times it's just maybe it might be just a single male living alone, or it could be a mom and her pup.
Okay, we have another question at Daniel Island.
Yeah.
How many miles per hour can a river otter swim?
They're pretty fast. They can go about 12 miles an hour. All right, did we answer everybody's questions?
All right, Beth, we have a follow-up question to how otters communicate.
Okay.
How do otters speak?
or the question was like, what does it sound like when they communicate with each other?
Oh, so the best way to describe it is, it would be a lot like hearing your dog maybe growl or even bark. They make similar noises, and they have vocal cords just like we would have to talk. That's what the river otters have to make those sounds in their throat. But it would be very similar. The best way to describe it would really be similar to hearing some of the noises that your dog might make. Cool. I'm glad they're being so active for you guys. They are loving this enrichment. One of the reasons that we did this is because I was worried that they would just be sleeping the whole time and you guys wouldn't get to see them. So we thought it would be a great chance to be able to give them some enrichment so that we could get them up and moving around the exhibit. And you could really see how they can be on the land and in the water.
We have another question at How Hall Ames.
How many babies can the river otter have?
Oh, very good question. Not too many. It's usually about 2 or 3. I don't have a lot of babies.
Do we have time for another question?
Sure.
Okay, we have another one from Daniel Island.
Okay.
Do river or sea otters eat jellyfish?
Oh, that's a great question. Not really. And it's mostly because of where we find jellyfish. So jellyfish would be out in the ocean and in that nice salt water. And a river otter wouldn't really go out there to be able to hunt for jellyfish. So get this guy on land there. River otters can go into kind of like the salt marshes and things like that we have around here. So sometimes we've actually seen wild river otters out here, right here at the aquarium, on the beach that we have next to the aquarium. Sometimes they have been spotted out there, but they can't stay out there because that water is kind of salty. They can't stay out there. They have to get back to fresh water. So sometimes they'll venture in to the salt marshes where it's that mix of fresh water and salt water. But again, they can't stay. They have to get back to fresh water. So it's possible that they might be able to catch a jellyfish or two if they were in the salt marshes, but that's definitely not going to be something that they would want to eat or want to go after, because they're really looking for the fish and kind of the bigger, more meatier animals.
We have another question at How Hall Ames.
Okay.
How well can sea otters see?
Oh, they have pretty good vision. So that's comparable to our vision. But a lot of times what happens is if they go underwater and the water is murky or you can't see in the water too well, then that's when they'll use those whiskers to be able to kind of feel around and kind of hunt for their prey. Because it would just be like us going in the water when it was very cloudy and you wouldn't be able to see anything. So sometimes that happens in the water that they're swimming in, and they have to rely on their other senses to survive and to be able to kind of sense the environment. So they have pretty good vision, but sometimes when they can't see, they'll rely on their other senses.
And another question from Daniel Island.
Okay.
What's an otter's lifespan?
Out in the wild, they will live to be about 12 to 13 years old. So right around what our guys are now. So since Ace is 13 and Stono is 12, that would pretty much be their lifespan out in the wild. They don't live much past that. But here at the aquarium, being in human care with no predators and lots of food to be able to eat, they can live a lot longer. And so in human care, river otters tend to live about 25 years old. All right. How are we doing? Any more questions?
We have one more at How Hall Ames.
Okay.
All right, Mitchell. Just say it, babe.
How long does it take for a baby otter to be born?
Oh, you know what? That's a great question. I'm not sure how long, as far as like how many months that the mom otter is pregnant with the baby otters, and I'm actually not sure. So that would be a good one to research and to try to look up. But that would be a good one.
All right, Beth, we have another question from St. Stephen.
Okay.
Can anything rot their teeth?
Oh, that's a good question too. I believe that yes, they can, and not necessarily rot their teeth, but it more just wear them down. So especially when the things that they're eating, if you think of like the things that they're eating, like sometimes they will go after turtles and things like that. Sometimes that can be very hard on their teeth, and it might break teeth or wear their teeth down. So that can be one of the problems as river otters get older, is that their teeth don't get their teeth aren't well enough to hunt anymore too, and so that goes into kind of why they don't live as long in the wild for sure. So it's not necessarily that their teeth would rot. It would be more that their teeth might break or they might start to wear down, and they wouldn't be able to hunt as well anymore or catch their prey anymore. That's one of the things that we look at here at the aquarium though, and when we do a physical on these guys, we will check out their teeth and make sure that they're looking okay, and that they're staying in good condition here at the aquarium.
We have another one.
Okay.
How old can baby otters be till they leave their moms?
You know what? I don't know an exact age, but the mom will definitely take care of them for a little while. So they'll stick with the mom, and that's her chance to be able to teach them how to survive in the wild and show them, how to hunt for food, where to find shelter, and things like that. So I don't know exactly how long they'll stay with the mom, but the mom definitely will take care of them for a while and kind of show them how to survive.
And another question.
Okay.
How long have river otters been around for?
Ooh, that's a great question too. I am not sure. You guys are giving me the stumping questions now. I don't know. I honestly don't know their history as far as when we started to see river otters appear. That would be another good one to research.
We have another question from St. Stephen.
Okay.
How sharp are their teeth?
They are sharp. They are very, very sharp. And so that's actually, we have to take precaution here at the aquarium, and we have to be very careful around the river otters. In fact, we actually will never go in the exhibit with the river otters. So what I'm doing right now, this is pretty much as close as we would get to the river otters when they are awake and when they're active like this. Now we do have a backup area for our river otters, and it's a room that they can go into that's kind of off of their exhibit. And that room, they have like a pool and things like that they can play in. But it looks more like if you think of like how a dog kennel looks, or it has cages in it. And we can get up close to the river otters, thing that kind of separates us and the river otters. And it's just because even though they're here with us and they're in our care, they're still considered wild animals, and we would never want to try to get close to them because they could bite us and they could hurt us with their sharp teeth. So we have to take precaution with ourselves too. And actually, when our vet, when he does an exam on them, he will actually have to he puts them to sleep. So just like we would go in for surgery and we'd have to get put to sleep to have surgery, that's exactly what happens with the river otters. They get put to sleep, and that way our vet can really look them over without posing any danger to himself. And that's how he can look at their teeth, he can look at their paws, he can do all kinds of very hands-on stuff with them without it being a danger to him. So river otters, they do have a sharp teeth, and they do have a very powerful bite. And that's one reason why we would never get close to them.
Okay, we have another question from St. Stephen.
Okay.
And otters eat like a turtle. Did they spit out their shell or do they eat it?
Oh, that's a great question. They can, so a lot of times they would. They wouldn't really necessarily eat the shell. They would just, since they're very good at being able to kind of tear stuff and hold stuff with those sharp teeth, they would really just kind of tear the turtle out of the shell, as gross as that sounds. But they wouldn't really eat the shell. Now, they could eat like around the bones, and sometimes they'll leave the bones, but like when they eat fish and things like that, they'll eat the fish bones that go along with it. But with a turtle shell, they wouldn't necessarily eat the shell. They would probably just like tear the soft part of the turtle out of the shell.
And another question from Daniel Island.
All
How
right.
long do river otters sleep?
Oh, it's a lot. They sleep a lot. We kind of joke here at the aquarium that they play hard and they sleep hard. So they do need to sleep a lot because they do burn off a lot of energy when they are swimming around and playing and things like that. It does make them tired, and they do need to get their rest. So here, I would say they sleep at least as much as we do, as humans do, maybe even more. But a lot of times during the day, especially after they eat a meal, they will go and they'll sleep and they'll take a nap. So they sleep a good bit of the day for sure.
Okay, we have about 5 more minutes with Beth. So I want you to make sure that you get your good questions in so that she can get back on with her busy job at the aquarium.
All right, Beth, we have one more from St. Stephen.
Sounds good.
Do river otters eat anything other than fish?
Yeah, so they eat, they like fish the most for sure, but they will go after crayfish. They will eat frogs and toads and amphibians and things like that that's in their environment. So salamanders and newts, all those kind of animals. And even reptiles. So they have been known to try to eat turtles and even snakes if they can catch them. So that's kind of more rare, but after stuff that lives in the water first. But if anything they can catch, they're pretty much going to try to eat it. And that's one of the reasons why it's very important to try to keep their environment clean, is because when trash and things like that do get in the water, they are very curious and they do like to play and they do like to try to hunt a lot. And so a lot of times they might try to eat that trash. And that's going to make them sick, and it's not going to do this. It's really going to harm them. So that's a really good reason why we want to try to keep that out of their habitat. And they need those good, clean, healthy streams and rivers to be able to live.
We have a question at Ames.
Okay.
How many teeth do river otters have?
Ooh, that's a good question. I actually am not sure an exact number of teeth, but they have very sharp, I don't have the skull near me or else I would grab the skull, but they have very sharp, what we call canines. So those teeth that are kind of on the side, they have very sharp canines and very long canines that come down. But they do have a good bit of teeth in their mouth. I'm just not sure an exact number. That's a good question.
And we have one more question at Daniel Island.
Can river otters drown?
All right. Oh, say that one more time.
Can river otters drown?
Oh, could they drown? Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. They're just like us. Since they have lungs and they have to breathe air. If they were to somehow get trapped underwater, they could definitely drown, for sure. And that kind of goes back to trash and things like that too. So if they were to get into something that was under the water and they kind of got trapped in there and couldn't get back up, then that would definitely make them drown, sadly enough. So it can happen for sure.
Okay.
All right.
I want you all to make sure that you thank Beth for her time today and all of her knowledge and letting us see Ace and Stono. That was a treat. And she can see you all, so make sure you wave at her, give her a thumbs up, let her know that you really
I love it. You guys are very welcome. It was so great talking with you guys today. I had a blast. So thank you guys for joining in and listening to us.
Thank you so much, Beth. Have a great weekend.
You're welcome. You guys too. And good luck studying river otters. Bye-bye.